Hello friends, and welcome to today's Sunday tea time live stream. Hope you're doing well. Do come and say hello in the chat. Let me know who's out there. I'm running a little bit late today, so I've got a few things still to set up. I think we're just about there. We're not too far off. I'm so pleased to get started today. I've been looking forward to this all week because today I think we'll complete the first pass at this current scene I've been drawing and animating for the past couple of weeks. Do come and say hello in the chat. Let me know who's out there. Hi there, Tom. Good to have you with us again. Hello there, Sir Jan. Yes, very simple answer is yes, I do plan on expanding the course in the near future. I'll be doing one or two new lessons for the course to cover some of the newer features that are coming out with the current new 1.5 release. But the majority of the course is kind of already set up and already there to get through the basic workflow for creating a traditional style animation. But I've been thinking about creating some other courses to complement that one to cover other areas like cutout animation or effects animation, or just using the effects in OpenToonz. So I will be adding some other lessons in there. In the next, I guess, week or so, I'm quite busy at the minute, but the next week or so, I hope to add and publish some new lessons I've already recorded for Tahoma, because Tahoma, being a fork of OpenToonz, is slightly different, laid out different. It's got some different features in there, so I've got some lessons already lined up, about half a dozen of them, ready to go live. So I'll be pushing those live as well in the next week or two. And when I do, I'll be sending out a message to you all to let you all know what's out there and when it's available. But thank you for joining me on the stream today. Good to have you with us. Do feel free to ask questions as we go through. The stream today, the intention of these streams is simply for me to draw and animate in OpenToonz or Tahoma, both pretty much the same kind of program, and for you to follow along, ask any questions as we go through, if there's anything I'm doing you don't understand, or to ask anything in general about OpenToonz and Tahoma, and also for you to be able to make suggestions to me on what I'm working on, for ideas to improve it. Tom, I know, has already made plenty of suggestions over the past few weeks, which I've implemented. So it's brilliant that people are suggesting things with me as we go along. The idea is that today is going to be a collaborative effort for us to work on a project together. And I've already started working on this for the past couple of weeks. And as I say, I'm hoping today will be the completion of kind of the first pass of this scene, as I feel as a complete scene, even though we'll be adding to it in the coming weeks. So if there's anybody else out there that's not said hello before, do come say hello. It's great to see who's with us today. So I think until other people pop in and say hello, let me... there's somebody else. That's Vishal. Hello there. Good to have you with us. Is this your first time on the stream, Vishal, or have you been here before? I don't recognise your name. Gaza Chap, hello there. Yes, I'm very well, thank you. A little bit tired, possibly, if anything. I hope that doesn't slow me down too much. We've got lots to get through today, and I can't wait to do so. And how are you doing today, Casa? First time here? Well, settle in, enjoy yourself. Do join in the chat with either myself or the other guys on there. Let us know what you think about what we're working on, or if I'm going too fast for anything, I need any other explanations on it. That'll be great to have your input. Hi there, Vellum. Have I covered parallax effect in the videos? Yes, I have. I've got a series of 3 videos covering parallax effect. And if you go to my channel and do a search on the videos there, just type in the word parallax, you should come across them. The thumbnail images are basically a set of buildings three layers, I believe, in front of each other, and I showed three different techniques for scrolling them in a parallax style. Or if you go back a few weeks on the live videos, you'll see I also used parallax for the Bugs Bunny cartoon, the collaboration that I created a scene for, and I created some parallax for the background of that. So you can see that as well, that I created live on the stream. Hello there, Golden Slime. Glad you could make it. Good to have you with us again. So yeah, so last night I I was up a little bit late, had a barbecue, my sister came over, so I'm a little bit, started a little bit slow today, a little bit tired, so we'll see how we get on. So if you jump in and crack straight on with talking about what I did last week? I think so. What happened last week? Okay, so starting off with the first video that I made for last Friday, and that's a video of how to set up FFmpeg on your system, which is useful for importing MP3 audio files and for exporting to MP4 and to GIF, as I mentioned in the thumbnail. And I created this because of the version 1.5 release that's just come out, and when you upgrade from 1.4 or install for the first time, one of the first things that you'll want to do is to be able to render out to the full set of render options, and also to be able to import as well. So I wanted to create that early on after the 1.5 release. I also showed how you can import, after you've imported the audio, you can move the sound across the timeline to fit in with the action. And a small tip for rendering GIF files to be able to set a background so it isn't automatically transparent. Not quite, Casa. I may have had one small glass of lemonade, but no, I didn't really get drunk. But it's just a late night for me. So next week, I'm hoping to have another video out on Friday again, but I may have to delay it by a week if it takes longer. And that's because I want to create a video for a beginner's guide for using OpenToonz 1.5. And I've made a couple of videos of getting started with OpenToonz. I wanted to start again with a brand new video to show how to get started from installing, once you've installed 1.5, to how to use it to draw and animate and then render out your output. Because I see already the past few days people have said, I've installed 1.5, but now what? So I wanted to try and make sure that we'd got a video out there specifically for 1.5. So when you run it up, you see exactly what I see in the video. So you haven't got to imagine where different panels are, or my old videos use the X sheet a lot, and the default room uses the timeline. I wanted to make sure I've got that showing exactly how to get started, creating levels, drawing, colouring, and rendering out. So I've got a lot of planning to do on that, to try and pack in as many features as I can and as much detail as I can. It may take one or two watches for new guys to pick up how to use it. I want to try and make it as kind of a one-stop shop for people to watch the video and be able to use OpenToonz reasonably comfortably to work through and create the basic animation. So I'll be recording that definitely next week, and then trying to edit it down in time for Friday if I get chance. I'm looking forward to getting on with that. I've been wanting to do that for quite a few months, to be honest. Thank you, Vishal. I'm glad you found them useful. I really am. And if you've got any other ideas for new videos, Vishal, or anybody else, drop me a message either on the YouTube channel or in Discord server or Twitter or Facebook or anywhere where you see me publishing my stuff. Also this week, I've done a few other things. If you was here last week, you'll have noticed I had an issue with my tablet and my stylus, whereas I was... it was very frustrating. As I was moving the stylus in front of the tablet without touching the screen, it would make some marks on the tablet. And we kind of worked around that and got through the day, but it was really frustrating to try and do. within 10 minutes of finishing the stream last night, I figured out what the problem was. And it was basically an option on my tablet settings to do with Windows Ink. And I'd mentioned this in my previous video on the previous Friday for 1.5 at the very end of the video, to say if you're having trouble with pressure sensitivity, check you've got Windows Ink ticked or unticked in your tablet settings and in OpenToonz, and the combination of those two tick boxes could help you out. So I didn't take my own advice about doing that, but by unticking the Windows Ink option in my settings, which I'm guessing I may have ticked while making that video, by unticking it, suddenly it was working perfectly fine. So that's all it needed in the end. Didn't need a reinstall, a reboot, just untick one tick box, and that was it. So that's got that working again, which is good. I've also fixed a few things on my tablet. So I'd not set up the buttons on my tablet correctly. So the zoom in and out, I was using the plus and minus options in OpenToonz, which do a large zoom for about 50% or something. So you're zooming quite quickly and get sometimes too close to the image, and then zoom out too far away. It was quite jerky as I was trying to move around, unfortunately. And after a quick chat on the Discord, I changed that to use the middle mouse wheel to zoom in and out that way, and that's given me a much smoother zoom, so it makes it easier to use today. So I'm looking forward to using that today. And the final thing was panning. On my stylus I've got two buttons here at the end. One of them I use for right click to show the context menu, so I can do localized options in different panels. And the other one I've changed now to help me pan. So I've changed that to be the middle mouse button. So if I click that and move the pointer near the screen, I can drag and pan the drawing around the screen a lot easier. And I've forgotten what that setting was, but I changed that as well during the week. So again, it'll make using the tablet so much easier. Yes, Tom, I used the mouse wheel to zoom myself while using a mouse, but then I didn't think to translate that over into my the slider buttons on the side of the tablet. So I was really pleased when I was reminded that that's what you need to do. And also I downloaded the Tahoma 1.2 beta this week and experimented with some of the features, which are really good. I can't wait to make a video on that to let you all know when it's available, the full version's available, and to talk about what the features are. For instance, one of the very simple features is to be able to set the center point of a drawing when it's following a motion path. So that means that if you draw anywhere on your screen, you can then make the actual object you've drawn follow the path directly rather than being offset, because it used to use the center of the level rather than the animation center for the animate tool. That'll be, again, another small improvement, makes it so much better. There's also a nice feature that I like, where you can set the default folder of where you're going to save your projects. So when you create a brand new project, instead of just starting at Documents, for me it now goes to my Tahoma subfolder in Documents. So it just saves that one extra step, again making it that little bit easier to use. And I also spent a small amount of time making a few additions for today's project, which I'll talk about in a few seconds. So I did that a little bit on Sunday evening after the last stream, and then again during the week to try out a few things to see if it would help, and it really did. So we'll take a look at those in a second. So to help with that, let's go back to the drawing room. Okay, here we are. Let's take a quick look at the chat of anything I've missed. Absolutely, Golden Slime. Yeah, if you have any problem with your tablet, add or remove Windows Ink. And I think it was my own fault, to be honest. I think it's because I had experimented by ticking and unticking them as part of my video for 1.5. Ordinarily, I wouldn't have done so. So it's kind of my own fault for doing that and then immediately forgetting I'd done it, or not checking I'd reset it back. Grab lovely cup of tea. And it just made me chuckle when I realised what I'd done, because I'd only just recorded the video and told other people to check for that if there was an issue, and I had exactly the same issue. Surjan's asking about what do I think about making a comparison video between OpenToonz and other software like Toon Boom and TV Paint. I think that would be really good, to be honest, for someone to do, but I don't have Toon Boom or TV Paint, and it would really take a while to get up to speed to learn them enough to compare them accurately. I think that'd be a great thing to see and to have. We were, Tom. We did. We adjusted them, I believe, in OpenToonz, but not on my tablet settings. Because if I open those up, again, for those of you that may not have seen the video, everyone's tablet settings are going to be different. Let me open mine up. See which screen it comes onto. Here we are. Bring this over. So for me, here we go. It's on my digital pen options, enable Windows Ink. It'll be in a different location for everybody, but that was ticked for me. And we didn't play with that last week. It's one thing we didn't change. And it came to mind just after we finished the stream, and I thought, I wonder if that's the issue. Unticked it, came straight back to Tahoma, and it was perfectly fine. Just to show that we can all fall foul to these small issues. Okay, so what have I done since last Sunday then for this project? So for those new to the stream, what the project is I'm creating a scene to show here on the live streams for when I take a break. So instead of me just leaving either the screen on now with my drawing on, or with OpenToonz on, or having a static image shown, I wanted a scene that I could adjust each week in a few small subtle ways. I wanted to share some of your art on the scene as well in the background. So for those guys that are sharing art or animation over on the Discord, I wanted to include that in the scene as well. And I wanted to be able to add some animations in the background just to have things, a bit of movement, a bit of something happening, so that when I've gone away for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, you know, you've got something to look at and you know how long I'll be. So I'll leave a little sign on the screen saying back in 5 minutes, and there'll be like a timer on screen so you know how long I'll be as well. So today I'm hoping to get the basics of that finished, although what I had finished last week you'll see in a short while when I go for a break, because that's already set up here on the system. And this is being shown through OBS, my streaming software. So what I did last week, I broke out a few items from the basic scene that we'd looked at. So if you remember, let's zoom back to here, fit to window, and let me take away the chat so we can see everything on screen. Here we are. And feel free still to join in the chat. I can still see that on my separate screen, but it's not going to cover up to Tahoma screen here. So I can see what you're still saying. So last week I downloaded my avatar image and I created 3 images I brought into the main kitchen scene to use as fridge magnets. But then afterwards I kind of realised I'd want to make more adjustments to them. I might want to change something. So I decided to create a brand new project just for these magnets so I can adjust them here and not have to recreate them every time. So I did a few things. Let me just go back over here. So I created a new project and scene for these magnets. I added a thicker outline to the drawn magnet in an effect I'll show you in a second. And I also duplicated the head, as you can see, onto a second column, which I offset using the Animate tool. And for that column, I we'll take a look at the effects. I applied a colour, I believe, to make it all black, and then made it partially transparent to create a shadow of the same shape. So if I hit the preview button at the top right here, and then because there's a transparent background, go to Scene menu, Scene Settings, and bring up the alpha for the camera color. We can see the white background camera color there behind everything. Here we go. So now you can see there's a blurred shadow background behind it and a much thicker outline around the outside of the head. And this made the magnet feel more solid, more physical. If we take a quick look on the effects page, you'll see what I used to add that. And I'll leave the white scene background on for now. Let's make this larger so you can see everything. Okay, so I've got the faces column, which is the face you see at the front, and then the shadows column for the grey shadow at the background. So for the faces column, I added an outline of 7 pixel thickness, and that just takes the outline colour of what you've currently got on your drawing and expands it out. So that gives me a thicker outline, like that. And then I use the over effect to make sure that the outline was placed in front of the main drawing, and the over effect is just there to determine the order of what drawing goes over the other, and is especially useful when you're using the same column as I am here. And that pumps into the scene there. And then for the shadow, I just copied the head column, the face column, and then I used the brightness contrast node to bring down the brightness. And if I take away the other effects for a second, in fact I can just press the I button on the nodes. So that removes those 2 effects. It's only using the brightness effect. You can see the brightness is turned all the way down, -127, which turns the whole drawing to black. And then I use the transparency effect to make it partially transparent, so 75% intensity, so you can see through it a little bit. But you can see it's still got a sharp edge, so I also added a blur node just to blur the edge a little bit. And if I right click and regenerate the frame preview, that'll redraw that. Okay, there we go. So it's slightly blurred around the edge. It's a very subtle sort of shadow, just to give us a feeling of having a shadow behind it, and again it places it physically in the screen a bit better. I realise I've kind of dragged that there, so I'm going to undo the changes so I don't save that and any of those changes in there. So it's a very simple way of putting this together, and I created 3 different versions of the head for creating 3 different sort of magnet shapes, and I rendered these out as static images, and then I loaded them into the kitchen scene. I discard my changes because I don't want those. So here's the kitchen scene. If I go back to the 2D room, so you can see this larger, let's fit this to the window. Okay, so the 3 magnets over here. So that, because they're so small, that extra thick outline isn't shown quite as much. So I think I actually rendered out those images a couple of times until I got the thickness looking right. I may have had it too thin at first. Wanted to make sure it kind of stood out a little bit. Let's zoom into there. Okay, so you can see it's got a little bit of a thicker edge and a bit of a shadow. And that allows me to have these magnets in front of a drawing so they look like they're pinned to the fridge during the break there when I'm using this scene. The other thing I did was, so I put these into a sub-scene here called Render Separately, because the idea is I'd like to render out the kitchen scene like this without those magnets on the fridge and without the picture frames on the wall. If I bring those back, you'll see those. So I put them into a sub-scene together so I could just hide them all for when I render the main animation. And then if you step into that sub-scene by pressing the Open Sub-Scene button, you'll see my 3 magnets at the bottom here. As I render them out, you can see I've got one in each column there. So I've got the top one first, magnet at the top. On frame 3, I've then got the two magnets together at the bottom to be rendered out together, which means I could choose to show a drawing at the top or the bottom or both. And I also moved the picture frames to their own frame here as well, so that when I render out those 5 frames from 2 to 6, I've got 3 separate images that I can bring into OBS. And that means that I can have the main background showing, which at the minute is a static picture, but after today will be a video file, an MP4 file. And then on top of that, I could then show the images of the magnets and the picture frames depending on the images I want to include. So depending on your art that I'm including in this scene. So I could individually hide one of these if I don't need to show it, which I've actually done today. So I've got the top image and I've hidden the bottom right orange frame and then made this purple frame slightly larger and moved it over in OBS. So it gives me more flexibility for adding your drawings into these scenes. And I had originally, as I've got here, got a white background for the picture frames. I'm starting to think that I might just have the picture frames on their own as the outside shell I can place in front of your drawings, so I haven't got to align the edges some more. That's something I'll do later. So with just perhaps 15 minutes, 20 minutes work earlier this week, I got those small extra parts generated, and I'm really happy with how they look. And again, when I take a short break in a little while, you'll see how they are. So I've got the column for rendering separately, and then I've got a foreground for the room, which are the items placed into the kitchen area. And I've got the background, which is the main kitchen, and behind that I've got the outside area. And what I'd like to do today is to add a tiny bit of animation just to get things starting to move. So the first thing I wanted to do was to look at the kettle. So the main point of when I take a break often is me fetching a cup of tea. So I wanted to have the kettle boiling. So that involves 3 things. One is I'll have the hob colour, the hob area that the kettle sits on, starting off as black and then glowing red slowly over a number of frames. Then after a while I'd like the kettle to boil, so I'm going to have some steam coming out, which I'm going to try and use the particle effects to see how they look for that. Because there is a steam particle effect which I've not used before, but that looks pretty straightforward to get into, like a lot of the effects. But it will take some messing and some adjusting to make it look exactly right. Some of which we'll do on the stream today, and I might do some off the stream later. And then the third thing, which I want to record as a separate video to share on a Friday, is I want a digital clock on the front of the oven here, which will count down from either 5 minutes or 10 minutes, depending on the length of break I'll be having. So I need to create 2 options for that. So I'll do the clock outside of today's stream. So let me just double check. It is the foreground where the kettle and hob is. So let's open up that subscene, and then we'll make sure that we are adjusting this correctly just for the one object. So the kettle is here with other objects here, like the cup, as I thought, but the hob is in its own column there, which is great. And it's got its own set of colours as well. So one of the first things we want to do is to extend all the frames to last for as long as we want the animation. So let me take a note of this. So I'll start a notepad document on a separate screen. Let's put this up here. so I can take a look at that. We'll run a calculator, work out how many frames we actually need. So to make a smooth animation, we want 24 frames a second. So we want 24 times by 60 seconds in a minute is 1440 frames for 1 minute. And I want to have basic timing being 10 minutes. But then I'd also like a bit of a buffer at the end after the main 10 minutes, just in case I'm a little bit longer. I won't expect it will be too often, but I don't want the video to run out, even though we could cycle it round. So let's do 10 minutes first. That's 1 minute, so let's multiply that by 10. That's 14,400. Let me just note that down. We'll use that a few times. Close that. And hit save before we start, so we know where we are. So I don't need the sketch to be extended, but I need, I think, all of the other columns. If I highlight them all, and by extending these for so long, this potentially is where I'd expect to get a crash as you're making the animation 10 minutes long. Ordinarily, I'd make animations much shorter because the more you have in them, the more likely they are to potentially crash. So let's highlight those frames, and then I'll right click and choose Edit Cell Numbers, Repeat, and tell it what frame number to repeat those up to, which is 14,400. Hit repeat. Now I've got 10 minutes of frames. Save for this particular animation. I'm having second thoughts immediately on doing this. Let me undo that, because it's only on the main timeline we want to set the timer being 10 minutes. In here, there's not going to be 10 minutes of different animations. So let's do the timing of the animations that we do want in here, showing only the animation we want. And on the main timeline, we can place that animation in the timeline. Absolutely, Golden Slime, you can. I say to many people, do right click and see what menu options there are. Especially in the edit cell numbers, these options here, these features are really useful. But as I say, on the main, inside this subscene, I won't extend it for the full length. We'll come back to that. So let's very simply sort out the hob colour first. So we want to extend this a little bit. So I'll just drag them over for now, just across a number of frames. The number doesn't matter. And on frame 1, I want the front right hob ring that we turned on to start off as black like the others. And then I want to key this and have it change over a number of frames. So frame 1 I'll have sitting on the main timeline for a little while first, and then change over. So let me try to think where it is in the menu, to be honest now. Or that been taken out of here? The keying of colours. Yes, kind of, Tom. That's what I'm thinking. There'll be a warm-up of, say, 12 or 18 frames where the hob starts to glow red. I should just spot something I need, which is really good. Yeah, 18 frames or so where it goes red. And then the kettle sits there without doing much for a while, but that'll be a single frame in the subscene. And then in here, there'll be the animation of the steam coming out. And then on the main timeline, I can paste that out to whatever pace I need to. So yeah, so I was looking at the top here for the color keying. It's actually at the bottom on the palette entry, of course. So the ring on, I'll press the button to set a key on frame 1. Then we'll move forward a number of frames. So let's go to frame 18. And I'll change the colour of the ring to be a bright red. And again, press the key button. And now you can use these arrows to the left and right of the key button, jump between where there are keys in the current column. They're not shown visibly on the timeline or X sheet or in the function editor. The only way to jump between the keys is with those two buttons there. So if you're not sure if your colour manipulation is working correctly, check where you've got the keys first. So if we look at this from frame 1, I'll put it up to 42 where I am there, and just hit play. And the front left hub, the front right hub will start to go from black to glow red. Good. And that is again on frame 18 there. So from frame 18, we can just leave that cycling on the main timeline for as long as we need. And then at some point, we need to apply the steam. So I'm thinking the best way to show this is I'm going to add a text note level here, so I don't forget where the colour keys are. Let's name it anim, so I know the animation we're considering. Frame 1, font RB1, and then on frame 18 I'll double click in there and I can type RB2 red. And adjusting these keys and adjusting these texts isn't easy. It's not the best system around, but it's something visual on screen in the timeline that'll help me know what is in each place. Let me just add onto here. Starts off black. Okay, so I've got these two keys there on the colour, so I'll place that like that. So it's right in the next frame's golden slime, because on the main timeline, if I close this subscene, go to main timeline, all the other drawings are only lasting for one frame. So when I want to edit in place and see what's on the main timeline, there literally is nothing there. I've not extended them yet. So if I wanted to make things more straightforward, I can highlight the background and outside subscenes and just extend those for a while. When I go into the foreground again and move along, you should see, edit in place, you should see that background. Well, that's interesting. Maybe it's because I've not yet exposed those subscene drawings on the main timeline, so let's do that as well. So if you select on the column of the kettle subscene that I'm editing, if I right click and choose resequence, that shows all the frames that are in the subscene. You can see the kettle under there, the hob is getting red in those frames there. And now if I step in, I suspect I can see the main scene because these frames are exposed. So I've got a habit when I've been working with subscenes of trying to make the subscene just contain only the drawings and animation that I need and not necessarily the timing. So I want to put in as much of the animation here without trying to consider the timing, which means on the main timeline I can space it out much easier without having kind of duplicate frames in the subscene. So we only want movement in here if at all possible. So from frame 18, the kettle is red. So from frame 19, that's where I want the steam to start coming out of the kettle. So let's hit save. And on frame 19, we'll go to the FX room. We'll make sure we're in the FX schematic we can see the button here saying FX. If not, click the button at the bottom right and you change between the stage schematic and the FX schematic. It cycles between the two. So keep pressing them until you've got the FX button, and then you know what you've got here. And if I click that, I can simply filter using the search bar at the top here to the effects I want. So I know it's called Steam, so I can just type Steam and then add it. But if not, you can just browse to it, and it's in the render section, particles, Steam. So let's insert that. And that creates, in effect, a new column, and you can see it here on the timeline. And we can plug in a texture of what the Steam looks like, what the particles will render, as well as a control, which I can't quite remember what it is. I think it's to do with the pacing or the colouring. So I'm not too concerned right now. We can come back and finesse this again later. So the Steam starts from frame 19, as I've already put, and it's extended it to the end of my current sub scene. And if I take a look at this, if I hit play from frame 19, let's move the start marker over here so I can only see this section, and then hit repeat play. We can't see anything happening right now, so let's turn off the edit in place so there's less here to look at, and take a look. I need to turn on the preview, of course, at the top right. And because it's got a dark background, I guess that's why we can't see anything. So again, scene settings, bring up the alpha so you can see the camera color. Let's see how that looks. There we are. So here we can see some little grey dots just showing where the Steam would be. So what I'll do for the Steam column is you can move the position of the start of the effect and adjust the size of it, either by using the widgets on screen, the items in the parameters here in the editor, or you can use the animate tool to position it as well, I believe. So if I'm on the animate tool, move the position, start from near the spout. I'll go to the all option, it'll make it easier to adjust. Let's move the center point to the same place, so then I can use the rotation, bring that over so the Steam is going forwards rather than going upwards. Let's hit save and take a look at this in preview. So if I go to the preview settings, I always like to shrink the output because I don't ever watch it at full size, the whole screen. Let's hit preview on that. That's the size we get. And let's hit the replay button. You've got the basic gist here of something coming out of the end of the kettle and going forwards. And it uses some just default particles to show you the idea of the position and the scale and quantity of the particles that you get and the direction. So we just need to adjust those to be actual Steam style looking particles. And we can do that by drawing our own Steam clouds. So let's create a new Toonz raster level, a smart raster level in Tahoma. And I'll go to the 2D room. I've got the toolbar, so we could do it here, but in the 2D room, I've got the palette colors and everything. It's just easier in the right place. As always, I don't like to change the first two colors. Let's add a new color. We'll make it kind of a gray color. And then using the brush tool, the size is sort of irrelevant. Let's make it smaller. Pencil mode. No, let's turn pencil mode off. So we've got some anti-aliasing to make a neater looking Steam cloud. And then let's show the center of the screen. So go to the view menu and show the camera box. I can see the center. Can't remember if it requires the images to be at the center or not, but it gives us a position to put all the different images. So if you wanted to, you can just draw one image in one frame, and it'll use that for the whole of the steam coming out. Or you can draw a number of images on sequential frames, and it'll use those images randomly, so you get different looking and effects of steam and different sizes of the steam bubbles. So let me just draw a few clouds in here. Then on the next frame, turn on the onion skin. We want different shapes and sizes of cloud. Then use the fill tool to fill those in. We've got 3 cloud shapes now, slightly different to each other, and we'll use that as the input. To make it easier to see the input, we'll label the column. And then back in the FX room, let's hit save before we go any further. And then on that steam effect, let's plug the steam in as a texture to use. We don't want those steam drawings to be shown on the main timeline, so I'll delete that line that joins to the scene there. So the steam is only used as a particle input to that particle effect. Okay, so let's hit preview again and see how that looks. So to start, let's make a few edits. So on these drawings, using the selection tool, I don't want the clouds to be too wide. I'd like them to be more circular. So let's just resize those. Okay, then we need to adjust the timing. So we go to the FX room and turn off the preview. Let's hide that column for now so we can't see those on screen, and hit replay. So because it's not using the default particles, because I've plugged in the steam, I don't see anything on the preview until it actually renders that. So let's just draw a line over that connector and delete that for a second, and then we should see the default particles, hopefully. I'll have to still do the render there to look at the quantity. If I zoom in a little bit, click on the steam node, we can then start adjusting some of these values. And you can spend a long time trying to understand what all these values are and trying to adjust them. And they're set up initially to a suggestion of the right size and the right number for what the effect is called. So if you remember, I added the effect from the render option, particles. So whether you're trying to create bubbles, falling snow, grass, rain, smoke, the values in here are set up for those particular types of animation that's in there. So this is kind of a default for steam, but for your particular case, you'll want to adjust this to the right amount. So at the start, we want to have very few. So we want to start off almost with 0 and then start to increase the number of steam particles coming out as the kettle boils more and more. It shouldn't start with lots of particles. So if I click on there, let me take a look at this. So the first thing I remember I needed to change was the starting frame. So this is when it starts calculating where each particle should be. So it starts 30 frames before the start of the effect. And that means that for 30 frames it builds up the particles coming out, which is why it starts off with particles all the way away from the kettle. So if we bring that starting frame back to number 1, it'll start calculating it on the first frame, so you'll have fewer particles at the beginning. The birth rate is how many particles to have at the beginning. Let's just have 1 for the birth rate at the beginning. Now press the key on that because we'll increase that as time goes by. I'll plug in the actual Steam drawings to the texture as I had before. So I can see them now on the right hand side. Let's take a look through these tabs to see what we've got in here that we might want to change. So it starts off with the speed. It can start off quite slow. In fact, if I put 0 and 0 in there, I'll key that because again I'll be increasing that over time. I think I'll bring the position forward of where this all starts from. Here we go. Rather than coming from behind the cattle there. The size is quite large. Let's make it smaller. So size 10, the smaller ones. It starts off smaller, 10 by 10, and key that again. So it starts off quite small when they come out. Use the controller image for the whole lifetime. I think that's what we want in there. You can orient the Steam so it rotates and turns, so we'll have that changing. It's from 0 to 360 at the minute when it comes out, so it's sort of randomized of where it's going to be rotated. That's good. The lifetime of how long the Steam lasts, 20 to 40, and again you've got a slider so it's not the same for every particle. Let me just increase this a little bit. So it can last a little bit longer. Have a look at a few more of the options. So in the environment tab, yes, this is where you might have, particularly for rain and snow, wind making the snow drift sideways or having a snow drift pushing that over. For the Steam in this case, we don't need anything changing there, I don't think. Animation. So this is where I was interested in for the rotation more so than the early one. The early one is kind of the initial fixed rotation point. So instead of all the clouds coming out like in that horizontal rotation and then moving upwards like that, you may have some using the same image but coming out rotated this way, the next one rotated at an angle, and that's the other option we set. In here we can set a rotation amount for as each Steam moves, it can rotate around as it moves around. So it's not the initial position, but the animated position. So we want to add a bit of rotation in here. So rotation speed, let's give it a value in here. You put 30 and we'll see how that looks. Then you can have some random extra speed. Again, between 0 and 33 as I've chosen there. Just so some will come out with no extra speed and some will come out with 33. Rotation swing, I can't remember, I guess that's rotating one way than the other. We don't want it to do that. Opacity, some are more opaque than others, and that's why you can see through some clouds and not others. And again, this is really good for Steam in particular because you do want to see through the Steam, but you don't want to see through the same amount, so we might want to change that. How many frames? The animation fades in at the start and at the end. So at the start, it can fade in over a number of frames, so I'll just increase that a little bit, and it fades out slowly at the end. I've got 14 there. I'll leave that for now, and we'll come back and perhaps look at that again. And then the colours, I don't think we need anything here because we're not changing the colours of the item. Let's just hit save. I'll extend the animation here so we can see a little bit better how it looks. Let me extend everything, and to do that, instead of clicking and dragging, I'll use the option in the scene menu to insert a frame. and I've set up a keyboard shortcut, Control Insert. I'd strongly recommend you setting up the shortcuts for Insert Frame and Remove Frame yourself. They're so useful for things like this. I can click now in the middle of that animation and press Control Insert, and all the columns are pushed forward. I don't have to highlight over specific columns. I can just make them all extended over to frame 90, just to give me a selection of frames, so it gives me a chance to see how this animation looks. So we want this animation to start off slow, so let's hit preview on that. Make sure I've got the Steam plugged in, which I have. And I started it off quite slow, so maybe I need to change that a bit quicker. So the speed here I've got from some reason in pixels 0 to 0. Let's make that 1 to 5. Save and then preview. Right, so starting off quite slow there. Then we'll make it speed up after a little while. So we'll start it slow, and then I'll put it on frame 60, but we might adjust the timing there later. And then from here, let's change some of these values. And because I can't remember where they started, what I will do is I will add a new effect, Render Particles Steam. And I can click on that and see what the value was before. So there's my node I'm going to use, and my speed was 1 to 5. But the default is 4 to 11. I'm going to click between those two and see what actually changed. Okay, so here on frame 60, let's increase this to be 10 to 15. And I'll press the key button to apply that key. And let's just check by going to frame 19, see the values 1 to 5. And frame 60, you can see the new values. Those keys are added. Then let's take a look at the size. They got 20 to 80. So let's increase it here again. 20 to 80. So it's on the default that they had there. I'll take that theme column away from the render output so it doesn't actually get rendered. Okay. See what the keys have changed. I'm looking for these keys here being highlighted in yellow. Okay, and then the birth rate, quite low there, so let's bring it up to 4. Hit save and then preview, see how close that looks. Again, make sure I've got everything plugged in correctly. Yep, my Steam connected into the Steam node there. What I've changed. I've changed something. Use controller image. I'm going to untick that. So it matches. I didn't change this back, so 20 to 80, then press the key button. What else have we got? Environment, I didn't think. Information, change these. Rotation. Preview. Yeah, I can check I've got some steam coming through, so some small ones there. A few more, but not many, so I need to increase some values to increase that. Again, preview. You can see the steam tumbling out and rotating there. I've not got enough at all, so I've reduced the numbers down far too small in one of the sections. Let me check on that. Start with the source. Okay, so that starts off. I like to look at the interpolation for these as well. Add the key, that make sure it's better. They will probably increase that even more. So let me send this out to 132. Turn off the preview, click in the gap somewhere and press Control and Insert. Send that to 132. And in my text column that I put in there, they got called anim. So that was on frame, got the right frame number here, frame 60, where I want to add that note. Let's go faster at 60, and then over here I'll go the fastest. I'll increase that even more. That column. Okay, so let's increase the numbers again for a third time. So the speed, instead of 10 to 15, make it 30 to 50, which might be too much. We'll see how that goes. I wanted to look at that rotation speed because that's going quite fast here. So animation, I got from a guaranteed rotation of 30 degrees plus a random amount. Let's change the guaranteed rotation to 0 and then make it totally random. So the sum rotation, so I'll give it 5 degrees, 33, that's quite a lot. Let's do 25. So it's got a different pace of tumbling. We'll see how that looks. And that should last through the whole animation because I've not keyed that. So the birth params were 10 to 15, and I'll make them here to be 20 to 40, and then press the key button. Again, let's check they're keyed. Yep, that's fine. And then hit save, preview settings, that's got all the frames, and then hit preview. We've got 3 paces of the steam building up, starting very slow, getting faster, and then the fastest. You can definitely see the pace picking up. So it starts off quite slow there, it goes faster, then really fast. There's still lots of gaps in between. I'd like to kind of remove those gaps so it's almost continuous steam if I can. But that's kind of the principle of what I'm after. And as I said earlier, I'll change this a little bit, but I'll possibly come back offline and change it some more, rather than you sitting watching me here, just changing some small settings. I think you're getting the idea of what I'm trying to change. Make sure all 3 keys are on the screen here. So it starts off really slow, and because of that I can now bring the position back. I can see how that looks. Then the medium speed is still quite fast. See if I can find that gap in between. So the birth params 10 to 15. I wonder if the trail could be useful actually. Let me add some trail in here. Preview that. How does that look? Make it smaller. Regenerate the frame preview. See how that looks. Still quite high. Let me bring that right down. What's quite interesting, that could be worthwhile. We make it quite small though, so 2 to 9. Save that and preview that, see how that looks. It'll take a while to calculate this. Yeah, it gives it, yeah, the trail behind gives it kind of that blurred look. Don't quite think is what we want. I will apply like a blur effect afterwards or something to the smoke anyway, but I don't think the trail is what we want. Let's bring that back to 0. Okay. So the lifetime, I will change that for the super fast pace, and we'll make the lifetime beforehand be, I'll key that. On the frame before, I need to apply the same key. In fact, I'll undo that key. So I want it to gradually increase. So let's stick with adding the same static 3 key. So on this third point, let's make the lifetime of some of these go a bit longer. Instead of 20 to 60, I want them to last longer, so 40 to 80. So the smoke will last a little bit longer. Let's hit save so I don't lose anything. Animation. Really, it's the birth I think I'm concerned with at the minute, because of there's that gap between the birthing speed. These. Did I increase the size there? 20 to 80, and then make this larger again, so 40 to 100. See that. 80, 400, starts off 10. So 10 to 20, 20 to 80. Let's 10 to 30. On that. Okay, that's the size of them. Mass orientation. Okay, speed and angle. Review that again to see where we are. So I seem to have lost the rotation. I need to bring that back. But that's not too bad. I might make the third stage even quicker. Let's bring it over to here and look at some of these values. So the speed is fine. It's the quantity. That's the birth rate. There we go. So the birth rate is 5. Let's bring this up to 10. Double it. And then press the key button. Animation step. I'm not concerned about that or the random seed, because of there's different shaped steam bubbles that it's creating anyway. I don't need to randomize that any further. The birth params here. Speed 20 to 40, 10 to 15, so that's being increased, that's fine. I'm just increase this again, see if it makes a difference or where it makes a difference. I'm not sure if that's the speed of movement or the speed of generation, because it's in the birth params section. Also wanted to change the angle of these, didn't I? Let me Come back to the beginning here and bring out. Not see where that's going to until you've got quite a bit coming out. In fact, I can start off with a 0 rotation. Maria, you've made it! Glad you could join us at last. Glad you made it today. Have you got a bit of a gap in your practice today then? Rotation is 0. Okay, then here, rotation 0. Here I want the rotation still to be 0. We'll look at this in the function editor in a short while. And then here, I want it to come over a little bit. A little bit. It's coming forwards a little bit, and then as it goes faster to here, again halfway or so, I'm going to add the same rotation, and that can increase during here to. Okay, well, I'm glad you made it, Maria. It's good to have you with us. You just caught me trying to mess with particle effects and trying to get that working neatly, and so far so good. I think it's going okay. Let's just have a preview of that angle moving. Right, before I do, let's go to the timing room and check out what that angle really is. Go animated only, there we are. Trying to find the rotation there. Yeah, it takes some time to get used to, Maria. I'm by no means an expert on it, but I do like to dabble. So let's see how this looks with the preview, see how far we've got. As I say, I could spend hours doing this, and I'm not going to do that today while you're all watching. But I want to get the basics working, so you've seen sort of what I've done to get it started, and then we can you can go from this. We'll change it later to get it neater. Let's hit play. So it starts off with the seams coming upwards, then it starts to go forwards, and then it goes forwards more. It's kind of what I'm after. The angle is a little bit extreme for those two positions, so I'll change that. Start at the beginning. So the angle is rotation of 0. Say 0 to there, then comes up to -27. Let's just make this -15, just for an even number. Now I can change the second one to -15.2. And up to a total of, instead of -54, -30. Do a preview on that. Yeah, okay. And I want to have this take a while longer to build up. So at the beginning, it's quite slow. So again, we'll use the Control Insert key shortcut to add a few frames to that. So let's move this forward. I'm looking at that note level. 1, 2, 3, 4 sections of 6 that's moved along, so that's 1 second extra. It goes to the medium pace. Again, Control Insert. I'm looking at a note level, bringing forward 1, 2, 3, 4. There we go. And there's no great rush for this animation to proceed. So I'm happy for it to go slow. Let's bring the playhead forward. Yeah, the birds are looking really nice, Tom. I'm really enjoying the process of that progressing. So thanks for sharing those. It's really good to see them. And this is where it's going fast, so let it boil fast for a little while. Again, I'll insert that. Go longer. I was thinking about adding sound to this at a later point as well. That might adjust the length of the animation. And then I think I'd like a key here as it slows down. So I'll adjust the colour of the hob as well. That's from 216. So let me bring that forward for those few frames, and these two up to 246, and then this one I'll add a key on all the parts. So I've got a key and I'll slow it down quite a lot. So birth rate is 10. Birth params, I've got the size there and the speed. Environment hasn't changed. Animation, I didn't change that at all. That's fine for those. And slow it down over a number of frames to here. An extra one, so starting at frame 241. I want them slowing down to, that's not the source, the birth rate down to 1. The birth params, speed, be 510. Key that. Remember to press the key button. Birth rate of 1. Tab away, then press the key button. Birth params. The size, 40 to 100, onto smaller, so 10 to 30. And then press the key button. Maybe Maria, I want to kind of get hold of some sound effects. So a boiling kettle first, just some bubbling water, and then either a whistle or, as you say, a tune or something at the end. And then I'm going to have this slower rate go for a number of frames. So again, Control Insert key, extend that over. I'll go one, I'll undo that. Control Delete, so it's 264, but then on the penultimate frame I'll delete the Steam frame for that column so it disappears entirely, and that's the final frame for it to rest on. That's up to frame 264. So if I right click and set stop marker, then we'll go to preview options. That'll correctly have those values. I don't want it starting at frame 1. I want it starting on frame 19. I've not changed the colour, so I'd like to change the colour of the hob as well. I think pressing undo, I undid my text, unfortunately. Let's go back to the timing room. I can see my timing here. It's 216. I can adjust these values in here later possibly as well, so that's fine. 216 to 241. So 216. Oh no, it's here, look. 216 and 241 on the anim column. So from here, I want to change the colour for the hob. Go back to the 2D room. Oh, you don't want to do that, Tom? But I did think about just recording the audio myself, just getting my phone in the kitchen next to the kettle and clicking it on to boil just to get some audio for that. So that's something I might come back to doing. So if I go to my hob column, and let's change this colour of the hob again. So I'll add a key. here at the start, and then towards the end. So I'm turning off. I'll add a key again on 216, so it's bright red. Coming down, I'll just turn it down over 3/4 of a second, and add a key again, and bring that colour down to dark. Let's take a look at that. Go from red to dark, and that's where the steam cuts out. So we'll hit save, and then preview. I don't arguments with Mrs. T. Yes, I don't think that you'd hear anything exciting there, to be honest. I do quite like his bird whistling, chirping in the background. Yeah, this is kind of one of the things I was trying to do with this. Let me change that position. That's gone wrong. To do with this little scene is to have something for you to look at and listen to. There's not me clattering around up here doing things. But I want to have something interesting on there in the background. But yeah, we talked originally about what we were going to do in the kitchen, and I talked about maybe having the kettle lift up and pour the tea, and then the spoon stir in the cup so you hear that clanking. We might come back to more of that detail later. Go back to the beginning. I think the animation's moved. I'm guessing this is kind of the undo bug with Tahoma. So using the animate tool, let me just bring that back up here. Be hopefully in the right place by the kettle. Okay, we hit save and preview that. Reset the view to 100%. Microwave beeps as well. Yeah, potentially. I do want to create at least 2 of these scenes, because sometimes I'll just nip off for a 2-minute break to go say hello to Mrs. T or to grab a biscuit or what have you. Other times I'll make a cup of tea and do a few other things, so I'll be a bit longer. So at the minute the plan is for a 5-minute and a 10-minute break. So I might have a different animation for those. Today we're just putting together a 10-minute one, just to get the basic animation working. Let's see how that looks then. Going from frame 19, from the kettle first coming on. The steam starts coming up, then it starts to go faster and move further forwards, and even faster and more forwards. Then the hob will turn down and the steam stops. That's kind of not too bad. Let me change the render output to include the first few frames with the hob changing colour in the first place. And that is the last of my tea, so I might go and make another cuppa. And actually you'll see the break room as it is so far anyway. We set the view to 100%. Hit play. The steam's quite a long way from the spout, so I'll just move that as well. But apart from a little bit of timing, that's not too bad, is it? I think that's not too bad at all. Oh, smashing bit of cheese, grommet. Yes. There's so many options, Tom. There's really so many options for this. It's for such a simple scene, for such a simple purpose. Yeah, I want to be doing quite a few things with this over the coming weeks. Let's move this a little bit closer. Do a preview on some of these and see how it looks. I need to come further forward. Click on a few frames and see how it is. I think I could. It's quite a long way away. I think I could actually work with that. That's not too bad at all. So I notice this is moving, so there is some extra animation in there. Let's take a look at this. Okay, so there's that position moving away. It's strange how I can't see the, because it's an effect column, it shows the effects you can edit in the effects panel, but not the standard positions you can animate. So X, Y, Z rotation aren't shown for that effect column, unless I'm missing it somewhere. If you can see, please do tell me. So what I'm looking at is, it appears that from the first frame where I set it up, this moves. Yeah, you've got to do it one frame at a time. Here, look, you can see it moving. So there's something that's been keyed. If I take away that key, because it's the position I don't want to move, I remove that key there. Okay. That key. Starting at frame 19. Let's just step along and see if that adjusts itself. So the rotation's happening, which is fine. Yep, I'll look at the top here for the rotation on the toolbar. I can see that coming over even further up to 30 degrees. I think that's sort of the position out there. I'll preview that. Okay, that's fine. Then from here is where the bob turns off from 216. I think here I want a key. That's moving over there for some reason, so I'll check on that. Well, let's see where that goes to. That's between these two keys here. Move that key. Fine. I'll bring down the rotation between 228 and 241. Bring that back to 5. Oh, back to -5. Okay, so the steam relaxes and goes slightly more upwards there. Let's save. Let's take another look at that. I think it's going to be pretty close to being okay. For some reason it never remembers the zoom for this window. Reset view and then hit play. That's not too bad. I think I'll do to be going fast for a bit longer, so I'll extend that. There. Okay, so where that rotates over, here it goes to the fastest. I want this to stay fast for quite a while. Let me control insert that again. Press 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's up to frame 288. Now if I step out of here onto the main timeline, fit this to the window, and then, as I mentioned earlier, I select the foreground, right click and choose resequence, it'll bring in all those frames that I've dealt with in this subscene. The first frame I want to hold for a while, where the kettle just sits there, nothing changes. So how long does that want to hold for? Well, we're talking about a 10-minute animation, but we want it to start boiling the kettle at the beginning. So let me edit cell numbers, repeat, and let's have a think. If I choose to repeat it for 24 frames, that's 1 second. 240 frames is 10 seconds. Let me put 240, repeat. That's 10 seconds worth of nothing changing, followed by the hob then lights up in the first 10 seconds. Let's open that subscene and find out what frame the steam starts. I don't need this second column, I'm not using it, let's delete that. So it's frame 19 is where the steam actually starts coming out. So as I said earlier, on just animation in the subscene, if I step out, make this larger so I can see the frame numbers. Frames 2 through to 18 is the hob turning red. And then from 19 onwards, that's where I start to see steam coming out of the spout. So I want to extend drawing 18 for a while before we get to any steam. You can just click and drag, as I said before, or we can repeat it and let OpenToonz decide how long it lasts for. So we'll do that. Edit cell numbers, repeat. So how many frames do we want this to last for? So we want it to, when do we want to start showing steam is really towards the end. So let me just work that out and bring up a calculator again. Here we are. So 24 frames a second for a minute is 1440. We perhaps want the kettle boiling. We could do it a couple of times to be fair, so after like 3 or 4 minutes. Let's do it times by 4. 5760. We're already a few frames in, so plus 257 is where it starts cooking from. So 6017. So repeat this up to 6017. Repeat. Let's hit save so don't lose what we've been doing so far. Zoom out a little bit. We'll see that same drawing of just the kettle sitting there. 3 or 4 minutes, so it's about halfway through here. Here we are. And then we start to get the steam coming out. With the final frame, we want to extend to the end with just the kettle sitting there. So instead I might put the kettle on a couple of times just to extend the time out. So let's just drag that out a little bit so I can see where it's going to. So this is the steam section. I could copy and paste all of those. So highlight them, Control C. On the blank frame, Control V, and then extend this gap to show the kettle coming on again and then boiling again. So it ends on 288. Then we want it going red again to start boiling again. So we want this, in fact, to not be from 19. I need to insert the first 18 drawings for the red highlights. Let's delete that one. And I'm winging this a little bit, so extend those over. Click and drag the first 2 drawings, and if I press Control, I can extend to the left. And because I've selected 2, it ought to count down to show the previous drawings, like that. Let's drag them a bit more. Drag them all over, and then click on the first 2, hold Control, and drag to the left. And now we've got the drawings of the hob glowing red again from the beginning. So the question is, how long do we want it to last before we turn the hob on again to boil the kettle again? And the answer is, looking at the last frame, 6582. In total, the animation lasts 14,400 frames. We worked out earlier. Possibly Maria, yes. At the beginning I was saying that ideally I wouldn't have such a long video. So I've made this 10 minutes long. So I thought what I'd do first is to see how Tahoma copes and generating a 10-minute long video. And if it doesn't do very well, exactly that. I pull out these pieces of the animations and then connect them together in Shotcut with a separator of just the background with no movement in between, so we can build up a 10-minute video that way. So we might need to do that, but I thought I'd just see how it goes for today. So the full-length animation is 14,400 frames. I'm happy for it to not have the last few frames doing anything, so let's just go to 14,000. Minus what we've got here, the current frame is 6582. It's a bit numbery, but let's stick with it. So 7418, so 7,400 extra frames in the middle I need, roughly. Or, in light of the chat we just had, Maria, maybe rather than making it a 10-minute video, I'll make it a 5-minute video that loops. For now, just to get things started. That could well be the best thing to do. So let's stop this here. Let's delete that frame and the following. And this needs to go to about frame 7,000, and that's about 5 minutes then. Using the greater than, less than symbols, try and step forward between different drawings. That's drawing 18. And I've removed those at the end now, so let me bring them back in here. Okay, so I've got the drawings 2 to 18 where it glows, then nothing happens for a long time. And at the end, I press the W key to extend that to drawing 19, then highlight those 2. I can extend that out for it to show the rest of the drawings in there. And I'll let it just extend out, I think. And it'll let me know when I've shown all of the drawings on the timeline. It'll show red drawings or red numbers where there aren't any drawings. There we go. So drawing 288, where it ends. And then this one, hit save. I'll right click and then I'll repeat that up to frame number 7,200. Repeat. And that is then 5 minutes exactly. And I'll do the same with the background and the outside for now. Let me edit cell numbers, repeat up to 7,200. Good. Okay. That's the kettle on for a while, so let me set the start marker there. And the end marker here after it all. And hit save and preview what we've got in that center section. Now I'm nearly ready for a cup of tea, so I will be taking a short break in a few minutes before we get on to the next section. So the hob is lit, and then we've got the steam coming out quite fast. Then easing. Okay. For me, that's okay for the steam now, for the kettle. I can come and finesse it later, we can finesse the timing and that kind of thing, but I'm happy where that is right now. So the next thing I wanted to do today was a tiny bit of animation of, I was going to draw some clouds in the sky and have them slowly moving over, and also a quick plastic tool on the tree to have it slowly swaying in the breeze, and that was going to be enough for today's animation. So I'm going to make myself a fresh cup of tea. So if you want to join me in the kitchen, and I'll see you shortly. Hello, I'm back. Welcome back. So let's crack on to the next thing. And I was thinking while I was making my tea that something you said, Maria, about making smaller animations and assembling them in Shotcut could be worthwhile. So I'm gonna mull on that a little bit more because of some of the other things I was thinking of doing with the animation, and maybe come back. I might break it out into smaller clips, perhaps. But the next clip I'd like to make is to have as I say, clouds in the sky, just slowly moving past in the background, and that'd be on a repeating cycle. So that would be an animation that is going to last the full 5 or 10 minutes. So I wouldn't be able to pull that out as kind of like a 30-second clip to repeat. It wouldn't look right. So I still need to render out a full 5 or 10 minute animation to include that. But yeah, we'll get started on that in a second. Thank you, Tom, Maria, appreciate that. Thank you. I'm happy with how it's looking. Potentially it's looking a little bit too cluttered, possibly. So we may come back and again refine it over the coming weeks to make it look more of how we want it to look. And as I learn more things and get more experience, no doubt I'll come back and I'll improve on things anyway. So the next thing, as I say, is I'd like to work on the clouds. So if I go back to the 2D room, and it's the outside we want to look at. Turn off the preview so I can actually move at a decent pace. I'll set the start frame there, so let's bring it back to frame 1. Right click, set start marker. So let's step into the outside background first, and it's very simple background if you remember from a couple of weeks ago, with just the trees and bush on one column, which I'll break down in a second, and then the background of sky and the grass, which are just it's just a vector level with 2 rectangular areas filled with a straight linear gradient, just to give us some very slight variation in the colour of the background there. So firstly, I'd like to add a new column over the front, which can be either a smart raster or a standard raster for the clouds. And I was going to use the raster brush, clouds brush, I think works better on a standard raster level. So I'll choose a standard raster level. Because the window is quite small and I'd like the clouds to be moving past in a kind of a non-repeating way, I'm going to leave it at the standard width, but I've changed the height because I don't need the full height of the screen there. So I'll just half it to 500 and press OK. Let me give it a name as well for that. And try and spell the word clouds. There we go. I'll make sure I see it there. The raster bounding box is visible. I can see exactly where it is. And if I use the animate tool on frame 1, lock the X coordinates and bring up this to the very top of the screen. The clouds are at the top there. And then create another new brush, and from the raster tab, let that load up. We'll pick one for the clouds. And there already was a clouds one in the raster brushes towards the bottom somewhere that I've used. In fact, there it was that I've used before, the clouds effect. Let's try that first, and then we'll try the new one that came in the new brush pack in OpenToonz and see which one works. So choosing the colour for this, we'll have white first off. Using the brush tool, and let's see how this comes out. To make it easier, I'll go to the scene settings and change the background to be kind of a blue colour. The exact colour doesn't matter because we're not going to use it beyond what we see here. Let's hit save and see what this looks like. This is quite spotty. Let's undo that. And that's definitely showing my undo system is broken. So before I go any further, I'm going to save, close Tahoma, and then start afresh. Just to make sure I don't start undoing things that I don't want to lose. And then we'll paint the clouds in. We'll have them as a repeating pattern scrolling past and see how they look. Let's use the eraser in freehand mode. Go to the outside subscene, open that up, and then on the clouds column, we can erase that. Using the brush tool, clouds, we're in white. Let's make this size 0, which I think is the default. Zoom in a little bit. And now I can actually zoom in a bit more comfortably than I could before by the trees. I can get it to the size I need. So let's see how this looks. We've pressed on quite firmly to get this. Cloud is not too. And then I'm going to create another new palette entry, and from the raster options I'm going to choose the new clouds brush and see how that looks too. That's already in the white colour. I'll do it on the same area so we've got the same comparative colour background. That's not too bad, and it's got less of that spottiness at the end. Let's undo that. Using the eraser, we'll just remove that cloud and then delete that palette entry, and on the clouds option, let's name it cloud so I don't lose which brush it is. From the raster options, I'll choose this new clouds brush. Okay, let's not go off the side. Oops. In the brush options, we won't go off the side of the screen because we want this to rotate round and to join on both sides. That's a pretty good looking brush. I like that. I really like that. We'll come back and add some grey background into that thing afterwards. So let me just add some clouds in. Let me try bringing down the opacity, see how that looks. Yeah, that works really nicely. A bit higher though. Allows me to have a bit more variability in the thickness of clouds. Wisps along the way. Okay, and then go to a grayer colour. Let's see if that'll go over the top nicely. Now undo that. Bring down the opacity a bit more. Yeah, it looks much smoother than the old one. This is why I brought over these brushes into Tahoma from OpenToonz. So I could use some of them in the occasional project. A bit of dark onto some of these. That's really nice. I do like that. Okay, so hit save on that. That's all I want to do. And I want this movement to last as long as the main animation. I'd like it to cycle. So if I'm longer than the 5-minute gap that I've got for the video, you don't see the join where it suddenly jumps. So if I step out of here, go to the last frame, just to remind myself of the length, 7,200. Set the stop marker so I don't forget. Stepping to the outside, and then I'll extend all 3 columns by clicking and dragging to highlight the 3 cells that are there. I'll right click and choose Edit Cell Numbers, Repeat, and put in the number 7200, then repeat, and now I can move the clouds and have it rotating around over that time, and we'll see if it's going too slow or not. The first thing to do is to add the effect, the repeating effect. So again, make sure you're on the effects schematic. You can see the effects button on the bottom here. And now right click, add the effect of, let's try and remember what it's called. It's the tile or tile IWA. Let's do the standard tile first. I only want it tiling horizontally. I don't really need a margin, so I'll put that down to 0, but it doesn't really matter for the sake of a couple of pixels. Hit save. I'll zoom out and then preview now and go partway through the animation. Not got any movement yet, so you won't see that happening. So the clouds on frame 1, using the animate tool. I won't adjust the height now, it's just the X position. So I'll click in the X position where it says 0 pixels and press enter. That'll add a key of 0 for that position there. Then I'll go to the last frame of the animation, and I want this to have moved all the way far right. Undo that, I was in the wrong column. So again, start again, delete that first key I added to the camera. I'm in the clouds column. So in the clouds column, click inside the X enter point, press enter. That will say it's key of 0 for the X position. Go to the final frame and drag this to the far right. Again, change it to the camera column. Make sure I'm on the clouds column and it says clouds at the top left here. Try again. Bring that over, the clouds now move. Then move them all the way off the side of the screen, and that should join up to the first frame. Preview that, you should see the start, the clouds coming in their cycle. So let's plug the tile in for the clouds. So just click and drag from the clouds into the source for the tile, and the tile into the scene. Remove the direct connection from the clouds to the scene. The clouds are only connected through the tile. Save. See how that is. So start at the very beginning. We'll click. Start to see these moving hopefully to the right. Yep, I can see them scrolling over. And as the drawing falls out the right, the tiled version comes in on the left. So it's still repeating. Yeah, somehow, Tom, I'd selected multiple columns or something. It was really quite strange. It's one of those things that catches me out quite a lot. To look at the top left to see that the current column that I want to edit is selected. So if I now turn off this background color in the scene settings, so double click on that color, bring it back to white, then make sure the alpha is turned down. Step out of that scene, so I'm on the main timeline. The tree's missing, so let's just bring that back. So I hid that. Here we go. And now if you hit play, you won't see much happening at all. And I'm interested in how long before I start to notice cloud moving. Yeah, that's quite slow. So let's increase the speed of that. So go back into the outside column. Make sure I'm selected on the clouds column. And zoom out. And where I'd moved it 1920 roughly to the side, I can increase it further to make it move faster. I need to do so in even amounts. So let me just mark off one screenshot and then two. And again, you can use the calculator to work out how far to the right you want to move this. And then maybe I'll come back to this during the week and break out the animation into a smaller piece. And as you say, Maria, use Shotcut to assemble it together. Let me just try that. Step out there. It's a window. Okay. You just confirm that actually I'm moving them and the keys are being interpolated. We'll go to the clouds column in the timing room, show that with the position here, click on the X column and we'll see it's got speed in and speed out. We want that to actually be linear, so we'll apply that so we don't see any increase and slow down in pace, it's just moving at the same pace. And I'm going to change my mind about this. Instead of having a key at the start and the very end, delete that. Let's work out the pace we want these clouds to move over. So if we say we want them to move the entire width of the screen there over the pacing of say 10 seconds, that would be 24 frames a second. 10 seconds, that's 240 frames. That would be here. If we put the N key there, over 10 seconds the clouds will have moved. So just to see how that looks, let me adjust the position here and put that all the way to the right, like that. Hit save. Make sure I right click on the timeline and run linear interpolation. And save changing that again. If we go to the Preferences, Animation tab, change that to linear interpolation in case I have to keep re-adding it and so I don't forget. Rewind to the very beginning and then hit play. Right, that's the pace for 10 seconds, which is really far too fast. That's 240, so let's do it over the pace of, say, a minute. So to save my math brain exploding, let's bring up the calculator. 24 frames per second over 60 seconds, 1440. So select the key, press Ctrl X to cut it, go to 1440, which is here on the clouds column, then Ctrl V to paste it in, rewind and show that. We can see some slow movement there, just quite slow. Even though it's struggling to keep up with the right pace, it's doing half the speed. Let me try previewing that at the proper pace. So give it a few hundred frames, right click, set stop marker, hit save again, and then preview that. Give me a second. Don't worry about the clouds on the left, it's just the pacing I want to see. 24 frames a second. So the question is that too fast? I don't think so. It's a nice steady pace. See how it reacts at the very end for the cycle round. Yep, that was a huge jump, but that's because I've not set the timing, I think. Yep, so that's because it doesn't go to the full end of that animation page. So that's to 1440. If I go to where I've put the cloud pacing to there, and then I can delete the drawings on the frame after over the 3 columns, means that's giving me a break in those frames, so I can click on the header bar for the following frames and select and then delete all of those. So then this animation section only lasts for 1440 frames. So step out of here to the main timeline and right click on the outside. I can choose to resequence. It'll show just those 1440 frames, which is lasting for 1 minute. And to make it last the full length of the animation, 7:200, I can select on them all, right click and choose Edit Cell Numbers Repeat. And tell it what frame to repeat up to. And now that will be repeated up to the end of that animation of 5 minutes. The last thing I wanted to do in here was to adjust the tree. So let's step inside here, hit save before we start. And it's a small thing I wanted to do with the tree of just having it moving slightly. I've got kind of a giant tree here that's quite sturdy, but I want to have some movement in it still. And I've got the tree in the same level and column as the bush. I'd like to move that out. So what I will do is I will right click on that drawing. Then from the cells menu, I'll choose clone cells. It'll create a new level copied from this one, and I can give it a name. I'll call this one tree. So specifically named for the tree. And then we'll change the name on the column so I know which one is which. So one is tree, one is book for now. And then using the selection tool, I'll hide one of the columns so I can only see the other. And I'll select around tree on the bush column and then press delete. Then I'll hide that. And on the tree column, I'll select around the bush, press delete. And that's nicely and quickly given us those 2 separate levels containing 2 things that were on the same single level. So let's extend the tree image by again, edit cell numbers, repeat up to frame 1440, which is 1 minute's worth of animation. I will use the plastic tool to create a mesh over the tree. Here it is. Zoom in and see how large the mesh is. It's going to move as one kind of solid shape, so it doesn't need to be too detailed. I can make the edges length larger there. Not too large, but yeah, we'll try that and see how that looks. Press OK. Let's build a skeleton. Try again, create mesh. That size, apply this time. That's better. We'll extend that mesh column by using the same method of repeat on the cell number up to frame 7:200. Hit save. We'll start by building the skeleton of the tree. So start off with 1 off the screen, go into the center point, and then let's decide where we want the tree to move. So we want it to move all of them apart from the main branches. So I need to fix some nodes around there. And then from the center node, let me click to do 2 points. See what happens. So to test them out, we'll go to the animate mode. And I just want to have this moving to the right, and then coming back to the left. Notice when I did that, the bottom trunk moves. We'll go back to build skeleton, and again we'll add a couple of bones or a couple of joints down the main trunk of the tree. If we go to animate mode, You have, Burr. I'm afraid I can't paint you a house. Do you mean paint your house in real life or paint you a picture of a house? It's quite a bold background outside scene here at the minute. It's just the basics of the scene. And we've discussed in earlier weeks what we might put outside. And we'll have airplanes coming past outside. We'll have spaceships potentially. Animals in particular, I'd love to do some delicate animation on some birds flying in, maybe have a bird house next to the tree, a cat sitting there just swaying its tail, that kind of thing, and maybe a house as well or something in the background, just to help fill up the space. I don't want it too full. But yes, certainly at some point I'll be adding to this. I'm going to right click in animate mode and choose set global rest key, which resets all of those nodes. Then we just try moving the top part of the tree. Yep, that doesn't affect the bottom. So again, set global rest key. I want it to move really slowly. So over the space of 2 or 3 seconds, maybe it'll start off here, and the tree will go 1, 2, 3, and come back 1, 2, 3. And then a second or two. So we need to pace this out quite steadily. So this position here is all the way to the left because there's no more drawing to the right, so I can't bring it back in. So I now need to move it slowly towards the right. Let's go to frame 84. Bring it to the right here. See how that moves. That's it, just a tiny bit of movement. And notice that's coming off the side of the screen there. So go back to build skeleton. Let's make this larger. Hit save. So we can see what we're doing. And I'll click on this final node and add another node at the top right. And that allows me to stretch that out. So if I go to frame 84 in animate mode, where that's come over, I can lift that up. Keep the green on the screen there. On frame 1, that starts off here. In fact, I can right click and set a global rest key to reset all the keys. And that'll move like that to stretch it over frame 84. And I'll wait a short while. In fact, I'll wait a whole second. So these numbers are spaced out every 6 frames. So that's 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 lots of those 6 frames is a second. So then here I'll add another key at this position. So if I right click on any node, I can add a global key. And a global key means it sets a key for each of the joints in the animation at the position it's at right now. So global rest key is the initial position, the global key is the current position. I'll add that. And then we just want to have key number 1 to be moving the tree back to its original position. So we moved over 84 frames at the beginning. So I need another 84 frames from 108 is 192. So I'll paste that key there. And you could even just go to that frame and right click and choose a global rest key, as we said before. I then want it to sit there for again another second or so. So I'll go along another second, right click, set global rest key. So it doesn't move during that time. And then if I press this little doohickey to the right, this button, it then repeats that animation up to the end of the entire animation. But because this is all contained, within the parent timeline, we need to consider where this animation ends at this right hand side here on frame 1440. Desktop marker. Let's delete one of these. In fact, I won't delete that just yet. Let's see how this looks here. So come back a few frames and hit play. And we can see that at frame 1440, it doesn't quite reach back to its default starting position. So there'll be a little jump when it repeats on the main timeline. I need to change that a little bit. Yeah, I've just noticed that you've joined us on Twitch today. So thank you for joining us from there. Most of the viewers here are on YouTube, so it's great when I see a viewer from Twitch. So welcome. I need this to move back to the right position at 1440. So the best thing to do is for me to have a think about the timing a bit better than I did at the beginning, rather than just putting a number of frames and thinking that might be okay. I need to make sure the cycle ends at 1440. So 1440, if you remember, was exactly 1 minute. So we could have this in cycles of 5 seconds each or 10 seconds each. I've got them quite short here. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 seconds to there. So yeah, almost 5 seconds. So we could stretch this out even more, be a 5-second animation. So 5 seconds, let me just again bring up the calculator. And 5 seconds is 24 frames a second times by 5, 120. And obviously 10 seconds is 240. So where I had ended at 216, I need to push it on a little bit further to 240, which is 1, 2, 3, 4. It's a whole second, but it's 4 of these 1/4 seconds. So what I'll do is I'll move in cursor in between the frames of movement, and I'll use the keyboard shortcut we talked about earlier, which is in the scene menu, insert frame. I've got Control Insert as a keyboard shortcut for that. If I click into here and press Control Insert to move the frames that's to the right forward by half a second. Now do the same for this beginning animation. So I'm looking at the key on frame 84. I'm moving that to frame 90, then 96. That's half a second. Now if I look at where this ends, it ends at frame 240. If I go to the end at 1440, here, we should see the keys reset to the initial position. The clouds I've got here to 1464, so let's bring those back to 1440. I'll then delete all the frames after that. And then if I step out of here and then have a look at the frame numbers on the outside subscene, make sure I'm only showing up to frame 1440. Is that one there? Yep, that's 1440. And then starting back at frame 1. Let me go back again. First one at 1440. I'm looking at the frame numbers at the top, which are getting quite crowded. I can actually type in there, I believe. 1440, press enter. Here we are. So 1440 is the last drawing there. Then it goes to drawing 1. Let's hit save. So I think that's it for the outside for today, what I wanted to do. Let's just take a quick look by going to the preview window. See how slow that takes to draw this, see how it looks. And I think it's quite a lot of frames there for it to calculate, so it's possibly showing too many for me to compare it. So rather than just doing a preview, let's actually do a render and see how that is. So if we go to render, output settings, over, and it's frame number 7200 is the full animation. But for speed, let's put the first minute of 1440. Make it an MP4. Just call it kitchen. Check that we're not shrinking. Although for speed, it might be better to shrink. So let's shrink it down to 2, so half the size. And then hit save and render. See how long that takes. And see if it actually completes without crashing. Which is definitely preferred. Move that up there. If it goes too slow, I'll just have to cancel this and we'll leave it. But I think that's pretty much what I wanted to get done today. Check the folder where this is rendering to. Scene. Okay, I think that's going to take too long today. It's the problem with longer scenes. They really can go quite slow. Here we go. So it started now, so it's done the pre-computing. Let's see if it goes at any kind of pace that's suitable for the stream. Let me just check my notes I've got over here. Okay, so I had a couple of other ideas of things I wanted to do, but they're not for today. I'll do them either on future streams or maybe during the weeks. I may work on them as separate tasks. And some of these I may work on as a task, record the screen as I'm doing it and share it as a speed paint so you can see what I'm doing. So we discussed earlier about having birds in the background or landing on the windowsill. In previous weeks, somebody suggested, was it Maria, I believe, suggesting having an Audrey 2 plant in the windowsill, which I really like the idea of, the baby Audrey 2, and having the plant just sitting there quietly, not really doing much, maybe just wiggling or the leaves were swaying until a bird lands, and then the Audrey 2 can lean towards the bird and struggle to try and get to it. Or the bird can land on the plant's head or something. So there's a few things around there I'd like to do. And also, kind of in honour of one of the friends of the channel, Noble Frugal Studios, quite fancied drawing Pie the pig up on the top shelf. Because one of the early scenes he's released and discussed about for his upcoming film has been having Pie secretly hiding on a shelf at the top of the kitchen. So I quite fancy having his head popping out behind the pots. So I might do that as well. There's so many thoughts we've all had between us about this that I'd like to get on with at some point, but I've got so many other videos on to do and things on to make. So yeah, Hungry Little Audrey, exactly. I'd love to do so. It's one of my favourite films, so it'd be nice to fit it in to a scene like this. But there's no rush. It can be over the coming weeks. We can slowly build them up. And if you have any ideas for small animations to put in the background, feel free to create them yourself and share them over on the Discord server as animated GIFs, and then potentially I could bring those in and place them using OBS in the scene itself. So if you've got something to go in the background on the outside here, or to sit on the windowsill, I could possibly use that if it fits in with the same style. So feel free to have a go yourself. I'd love to, absolutely, Maria. I'd love to have guest cameos from other people doing things. Yep, seasons too with the weather. So there'd be at some point I'd create a rainy scene or an overcast scene. So when it goes to the break, you'd see the rain outside on a rainy day. There's lots of options for this, there really are. And I'd like to have a few options built in ready. So we'll come back to that over the coming weeks. But next week, I may do a few more things on this scene. But I'm fairly happy with what we've got so far. If this renders to what I think it's going to do, or if I can do so during the week to get a scene rendering to an okay scene, a half decent scene, I might leave this for the Sunday streams for the coming weeks and move on to the next scene, which is when I do my presentation of what's happened previous week, or to demo someone's video or YouTube channel, and I go to, get the right room, this room here. I can press the right button. There we are. So that took a while to change. So where we've got the other scene at the top here of either screenshots or video clips or web pages, I'd like this room to have a bit of background as well. So I'd like to work on this scene, and I've already done a sketch which I've shown previous week, and that's to have this as a kind of library. So up above me you see shelves coming across here, as well as like a cupboard sort of system on the left here, or right, it is to you. And with the screen over there to be kind of a drop down screen, a pull down screen. So it starts off up, and I can bring it down to demonstrate something, and then push it back up when it's finished. And then in the background we have rows of books. I'd like a few picture frames in there, somewhere to show your pictures, as I've done here for Greg and Gigi. And just have another room to sit in when we're not doing drawing, to have something interesting happening in the background. I think I might start on that next week. I've had some thoughts, and if I go to the sketchy area I've already put in here, like this. So just to get the rough layout, I've made myself a nice comfortable chair, a desk in front of me, and then space for shelving above, and then cupboards here. We'll see. So maybe start on that next week, bring together a few ideas, and again, if you've got ideas for that as we put it together, we'll incorporate those into the scene as well. So that's the plan for next week. But let's see what we've got so far with this. Let me open the correct render. Hopefully, if I've got this correct, Kitchen MP4. That's this one here. Let's see how it looks. Okay, so it's rendered to half resolution, so it's going to look quite blurry here. This is only the first minute. So the kettle there, the hob's gone on, the clouds are moving and the tree's swaying slightly, just for very subtle background movement. I do like that cloud brush. That's really made some really pretty fluffy clouds very subtly. I like that. Absolutely, Maria. Brandy glasses and decanter. Perfect. You bring that idea next week or the week after as we get to the detail of that. Yeah, it wants to be a traditional sort of library feel. Real kind of old-fashioned, leather-bound, old-fashioned library. So on the desk I was going to have one of those green lights that you find in public libraries, that kind of thing. Yeah, and the clouds I didn't really spend much time on. So again, we could always finesse those, but just with a few minutes I spent on them, they came out really nice. Really nicely. So we haven't got the kettle boiling in this small minute because that boils later on. I might come back to that. The kettle looks awful. Every time I see it, I I don't like it. I need to come back and redraw that, I think. For a start, I've got the handle and the spout both on this side towards me, not on opposite sides, so I need to take a look at that. But I think overall, the start of having some basic background movements, that's not too bad. So what I'll do next, I'll end the stream in a second, unless there's any other questions come through, and then I'll render out the full 5 minutes. I'll see how that looks. I'll then bring that into OBS and see it in line along with the picture frames and the magnets and things on the screen to make sure they all still feel the right size. I think the magnets might be too large, so I might adjust those a little bit. See how the kettle steam looks, and we'll be using that next week. It is quite dark, Maria, the kettle. You're right, it's more metallic. Well, my actual kettle is an electric kettle, and I really wanted it to be on a hob to have the colour underneath, changing colour to light up and then to dim down at the end. Just to add that little bit of something, a little bit of movement. Everything I want on this scene, I want to be subtle movements, unless we have something outside like cats or something. Everything else I'd like to be quite subtle. Like if you look in a second at the hob, it starts to light up. There, sort of quite a subtle thing happening. I don't want to. I like keeping that, so I don't think I'll change to the electric. But you're right, having a reference photo, I should really go to a reference. This was just done from memory. It's a child's kettle. You know, it's got a handle, it's got a spout, it's got a lid. It's a kettle. I should really go back to a reference for that. But I was quite keen to get everything in place first. It's kind of how I like to work, and then to go back and dig into detail in one piece or another, and to improve one piece at a time. So yeah, I'm quite happy with that. As an overall thing, so the kettle I'd like to change. I might change kind of my cup. The two pots on the shelf almost look like clipboards to me. They haven't quite got the curvature, but I need to do something with that. We are looking up at them. So you kind of get the curved lid. You don't quite get to see the lid and the base separate. So I might need to do something with those. Or a glass kettle to see the water animating bubbles. Now that would be a challenge. That would be a challenge. I did actually Google some references earlier on today as I was thinking about adding the Steam. So I Googled Steam animated reference or Steam kettle reference, that kind of thing. And one of the references was a 10-minute ASMR video of somebody boiling a kettle. So they've got a clear kettle and they start off by just turning it on from just stationary water in the kettle to it slowly starting to bubble up to it bubbling thoroughly for like 8 or so minutes and then turns off at the end. And I saw that and I thought that would be interesting to do. Also very hard. Yeah, gradation on the containers. It needs something. It certainly needs something on those two. And I've chosen the same colour as the books. I need to change that, be different from the books. As you see the books, I'm quite happy with those, I think. And they are clearly books. And you've got the same kind of colour to the right, so I might change that. Using the bubble effects, possibly. I've not tried to do so yet. I don't see why not. It just needs to be sort of the circles in front moving upwards. It could probably work. But do you really get many clear kettles that sit on a gas hob, electric hob, to cook like this? You get electric ones that are clear. I'm not sure on that. But the kettle needs something happening to him. For definite. Okay, so I'm going to leave it there, gang. We'll call that a day for today. As I say, a bit tired today, you may have noticed. So I've struggled a little bit through today. So I didn't want to do a long stream like we often do, but I definitely wanted to get a few things done of the clouds, the tree moving, and the kettle with the boiling, although you can't see it here. Let me just before we go, let me see where the kettle boils. Let's take a quick look at that, shall we? I remember what frame it was on. Aha, there we go. We've got some there on frame 6056. So from frame 6000, yep, to 6400. Let's have a look at that. Set stop marker and then go to 6000. See how, there we go, see the change there. Save and then preview on those. Yeah, the books could be more colourful, true. Again, I threw the colours down to get things started, but yes, we could go back and review those colours. So, a $10 glass kettle with a whistle. Okay. I'll take a look, I'll see what we've got out there, because I need to choose a reference for something for that part. Yeah, because at the minute the red light comes on under the kettle, then it's totally stationary and does nothing for 3 or 4 minutes, and then the steam comes out. So if we had bubbles in there increasing in speed and time up to the point where it starts to steam, that would help kind of give some continuity to that. But watching a pot boil, as you say, is not normally something you do. Here we go. You can see how much quicker it previews when there's no action happening, when there's no effects, because the effects for the steam takes up a lot of the processing time. Let me just hit repeat on this. Yeah, so I think I could easily adjust the timing of the steam there to work better. At the end, it sort of slows down quite quickly and then just has a couple of. There should be perhaps a few more slower ones at the end. We'll take a look at that. Yeah, having the bubbling water. I'll have a think about that. We might come back then and do some more of this next week. I kind of wanted to move on to the next scene. But yeah, there's 1 or 2 things we could look at to neaten off for that. I don't think it's a bad start. I think that's okay for today. So yes, gang, I'm going to disappear now then. So good to have you with me today. Hope some of you enjoyed it, the ones that have been able to join for most of the stream today. If you want to catch up on any of this, it'll be on YouTube later. So you can see how we started for adjusting the colours for the stovetop. Otherwise, I'll see you next week for the next live stream. And that's a Darren Tea. Have you always wanted to animate but didn't know how to start, and software seemed expensive and difficult to use? Well, with OpenToonz, it's free, powerful, and once you know how, it's easy to use. And it's my mission to get you animating with it today. Hi, my name's Darren, and I've been teaching OpenToonz for the past 3 years, showing thousands of students just like you how easy it is to animate with. I'm cutting through the jargon to show that anyone can animate with it. And by the end of the course, you'll be able to animate traditionally using OpenToonz. and the course is designed for students brand new to OpenToonz, as well as those new to animation. So take a look at the free lessons I've offered below, and then why not sign up and join me animating traditionally with OpenToonz.